Okay, well, it's not gonna let me do that.
I'd offer to help Sean, but I've actually never done that myself, so I'm not.
I don't know. We will have to just record this and do it this way. So I'm going to start to, okay. Well, we're going to start recording. Welcome everybody to our family education series for August 2023. And we're really excited today to have Brad Girard from Families Together to talk about the CHASE program, working with justice involved youth and families in Johnson County. And I'm going to turn it over to Brad. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And it's nice to be invited to this. And thank you to Stephanie for inviting as well. And yeah, I'm really excited to chat a little bit about what we've been working on over the last couple of years with the CHASE program. I should also mention real quick, if you've ever met Isaac Swindler, Sean's son, he's just one of my favorite people. I just wanted to mention that because Sean, I've gotten to know Sean a little bit over the last year, and his son Isaac is a real treat. So I want to make sure that was on record. Anyway, yeah, so CHASE stands for Community Honoring Adolescent Success in Education. As you can see there, we've been running the program for 3.5 years or so, started in 2020. I've been with the program for 2 years, and just hop right into it here. So CHASE, a lot of what we do is what Families Together does, and Families Together is the parent training and information center in the state of Kansas, helping families with children with disabilities and special needs. So we do a lot of that work. What makes CHASE unique is that we serve a somewhat more niche demographic where we're serving justice involved youth. And so kind of how that came about was some of the Johnson County Department of Corrections people were at an education advocate training 4 or 5 years ago, and which is a Families Together training that we put on annually. And they kind of said, hey, we get a lot of these youth in the justice system who have IEPs and 504s and disability diagnoses, and we don't have a true expert on our team, and we're wondering if you want to partner up. So at that time, Families Together did go ahead and partner with the Department of Corrections on what is now the CHASE program. And so we focus a lot on education. That E in CHASE is education, of course. And so a lot of our work revolves around being a support partner with the families on things like the IEP and the Section 504 plans, as well as any, we had a call for an hour just the other day about exploring options with a parent for an alternative placement during kind of an expulsion suspension period. On that call, the school was providing a free and public education in an alternative setting, but the parent had questions and needed clarification around what that would look like and what their rights and responsibilities were as a parent. And so we do a lot of work there around education. So again, yeah, serving justice involved youth in Johnson County who have a disability or who need to be evaluated for a disability. The team right now is myself, Leah Hawley. I wish Leah was here to speak because she has a really amazing story and she is just so good working with families. She has decades of experience in everything that they're going through right now. So it's amazing to hear her talk to these families just because I can tell right away they really connect with her. And so she's the program director. She makes sure that everything is steering at true north with the CHASE program. My role, and I'll describe in greater detail here, but I'm the youth and family education coordinator. And so I do work with the families a lot. I'm on almost every call with Leah, working through the school stuff with them, attending those IEP meetings and helping clarify any information that needs to be cleared up on the school stuff. But also a big part of my job is actually working one-on-one with the youth, which is so much fun. I'm really excited to kind of talk through some of the ways in which we do that. And then we've also recently added Jordan Durkee, who's only been with Families Together for, I would say, 4 or 5 months. And she's our communication specialist. Jordan is the person that makes everything look cool and fun and funky for the Chase program. And she does a lot of the copy and stuff on social media. And so that's the team. So what do we do on a daily basis? What does it look like to work on the Chase program? So like I mentioned, one, we attend those IEP meetings. We go through the IEP. One of the first things we do is we get on the phone with the families and we say, hey, let's get our hands on a copy of that. Let's go through it. Let's make sure that the strengths, interests, and passions of your child are, baked into the IEP, and make sure that all of their diverse needs are being addressed by the school, and make sure that if there are concerns about whether or not that's happening in the school, we just have them sign a referral. Now we can sign a release. And now Families Together in the Chase program, we can actually attend those meetings. We can be on those email threads with the school just as a support role. We're not the decision makers. The families are still very much so that, but we're definitely there in a support role. Secondly, the one-on-one piece, we do a podcast, really, really fun. I'm actually going to play an episode for you all here today, but we do a mental wellness podcast, and we kind of use that in combination with gift card incentives. And so the episode that we're going to listen to today is around self-talk and positive self-talk. We also have episodes on developing a practice of gratitude and on breathing technique, so that in those really overwhelming moments, maybe if you're 14 and you're at school and something has triggered you, and we try to provide some of those tools to de-escalate some of those situations so that some of the decision making can be better in the moment. So we focus a lot on that kind of stuff. And then lastly, community events. So prosocial events is what we call those. And sometimes there's a specific outcome we're working towards on those events. Sometimes it's kind of just to have a good time and to, strengthen our connection with the families and to create friendships out in the community. So I'm going to tell you guys about a couple of community events that we've done, and we try to do those at least once a month. So this month will be a vocational rehab presentation where we'll have free pizza. Next month, we're doing a free concert at a coffee shop where we'll have a local musician come out and play. So lots of different ways in which we've been out in the community doing events. It's really important to us, though, that we're out in the community in person, building that trust with the families and just trying to have a good time. So I'm going to dive a little deeper into each of these components here. First, as far as family support and educational support, I don't want to bum everybody out, but I did choose this photo. If you're a parent or a guardian or a family member out there, you've probably been in this situation. And you got to remember that we're working with justice-involved youth too. And so, in and out of a lot of different systems, it can be very frustrating, and we kind of hear that cry for help in the voice a lot of times on those initial calls. And so we're very much there in a support role. I just chose this photo because we know how tough it can be, and every Families Together employee has lived experience through this same scenario, so we get it. Yeah, and I already talked about a little bit of this. I'll just maybe rehash it just a tad bit as far as the educational piece. I did want to highlight this one point, learning the right questions to ask. That's a big one. Family members and parents a lot of times just don't really understand their rights, and they don't, they've never heard of something like a manifestation determination review and or what least restrictive environment means. So learning which questions to ask, making sure that like we said, the needs of the student are written into the IEP, not just discussed in the meeting, but written in so that when that IEP follows the student from school to school, if that's the case, that they're getting what they need. And we also, like I said, sit in on those meetings. So we just did a manifestation determination recently. We also will help explore any potential options. A lot of the conversations we have are, hey, where can we get the most credit recovery taken care of this summer? Or, you know, yes or no, we think that this alternative placement is a good idea. So just being that support role in the educational piece. Youth support, like I said, I work one-on-one with the youth. That is how I spend most of my day. I put safe, stable, and nurturing environment down there below. That's a term that I recently learned in a trauma responsive training with Tazan, who's the technical assistance folks in Kansas. And they're really big on what they're calling their trauma responsive support planning, which is new in some schools. And the reason I put it in this presentation is because one of the biggest indicators for success for anyone with a traumatic history is creating a safe, stable, and nurturing environment around that person. And that means in the home and it means in school, obviously, but it also means just generally in relationships and conversations at events. So a lot of my job is to do just that. It's to, when I'm with them and when I'm communicating with them, is to make sure that it's a safe place where they can tell me whatever's on their mind. I'm not going to judge them for that. It's a stable environment, meaning you can count on me to show up at least once a week at the same time that we agree on. And that's consistent. You know, I believe a lot in routine and in ritual and in stability. And, you know, that's what they need a lot of times. And then lastly, if I could just put one of these words in all caps, it would be nurturing. It's funny. I feel like I was telling somebody recently, just kind of speaking from the heart about this job. And I was like, you know, I'm pretty much like a champion of these youth. Like if I were to really describe what I do, a lot of times it's just making sure that there's gas in their tank and making sure that they believe in themselves and making sure that I tell them that they're talented and I tell them that they're smart, and just using really positive, powerful language and energy with them and making sure that they feel nurtured. Because again, remember, they've been beat down by a lot of systems. They've been stigmatized as the bad kid at school. They've got a charge in the system. You know, maybe a lot of them have maybe a single parent household or no parents around. And so there's that layer as well. Plus just the trauma of being involved in the justice system. So very, very important that the environment that we're cultivating is nurturing for them. Chase your dreams has become kind of our, I don't know, moniker, I guess you should say. With the Chase program, we do focus a lot on education, but we also focus a lot on what's going on outside of school. And I'm going to talk through a few examples with specific youth of how that looks. But this is just kind of the attitude that we take in this program. It's kind of like, hey, if you want to be an artist, let's help you figure out how to do that. Or if you, you know, I have one in the program that wants to be a Navy SEAL. I'm like, sweet, let's, you know, establish this goal and let's work backwards from there. And no dream is too big to chase in this program. Now, whether or not we attain it is kind of beside the point. We're just developing those healthy habits and those life skills in order to try to achieve it. So like I mentioned before, we've got the Chase Your Dreams podcast. These are 5 to 7 minute long episodes. We wanted to make sure that they were bite-sized and not too overwhelming, especially for the modern teenager, the modern attention span in general. And I put some of the topics down there: self-talk, connecting to nature, gratitude. We talk a lot in the program about self-advocacy for sure, and breathing techniques, all that kind of stuff. And so we use this as kind of a fun one-on-one tool to where I'll send an episode as like kind of our weekly focus. So like, let's say the focus this week is on self-talk. In the podcast episode, which you're going to hear next, there is an activity that can be completed. And if the activity is completed, then they can win a gift card. And that is very motivating for them because who doesn't like free money to Amazon and Starbucks and McDonald's and all that? Another cool thing about the incentives that we're able to do, we work pretty closely with the Department of Corrections, court services officers and ISOs, and we'll kind of keep each other abreast of how things are going, especially if they're going really well or, not as if there's like some more intensive needs there. And so there have been times where I'll say, hey, I'm running a little incentive. We're setting a goal to be at school on time for 3 days in a row. I'm doing a $15 gift card. Just wanted you to be aware of this. And the ISO will respond and say, cool, I'm going to ante up and I'll throw $15 in there too. And so with those incentives, we're able to kind of help amp up the youth to continue chasing those dreams and those goals that we talked about. So I'm actually going to play a full episode. It's about 7 minutes long, just so you can kind of get a taste of how those sound. And then I'll share some more examples of how we're working with youth afterward. I'm going to pop out of this presentation here, and then Crystal, I might have you just nod your head if this volume seems appropriate here. Okay, looks good.
Hello and welcome to the Chase Your Dream podcast. Taking this step to listen to this podcast is putting you one step closer to achieving your dreams, your goals, and your ideal life. So congratulations and thank you so much for taking the step to join the podcast. Now on this podcast, we talk through ways to become healthier and more whole people, and that includes our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health, and all the ways in which we interact with other people and the world around us. Today's episode is going to be all about self-talk. All right, so if you're unfamiliar with what self-talk is, we're going to go through a brief description and an example, and then after that, we're going to talk through ways to improve our self-talk and make it more positive. That's really the goal of today's episode, making our self-talk more positive. So, in case you're not familiar with what self-talk is, we're going to talk about it. Basically, self-talk is the conversations in our minds that we have with ourselves. This happens all throughout the day. If other people are around or if you're alone, there's a voice in your head that's constantly speaking to you. Now, the ways in which we talk to ourselves in our own minds is going to shape our beliefs and influence our emotions and behavior. When we have self-talk that is repeated in our minds, this eventually basically becomes the facts of the person having the thoughts. So if we can shift our self-talk to be more positive, we're going to reduce stress, increase motivation, and increase our self-confidence. You'll notice that if your thoughts are negative and you're repeating these negative thoughts all throughout the day, you're going to have more stress and less confidence in your life. Now, this is going to take a lot of time and practice to get good at retraining your brain to have more positive self-talk. So make sure to be patient with yourself and be gentle with yourself through the process. Okay, so let's look at an example. Let's say you have a goal to exercise 2 times this week, and you plan on going for a jog after school. Let's say you get home from school and you put your books down and you end up surfing the web for an hour and you kind of lose track of time and you're just scrolling through Instagram for an hour. Or let's say maybe your parent or your guardian or sibling or a friend asks for help and you end up helping them instead of going on the jog. Now, an example of self-talk might be, oh, I just always make excuses to not exercise. I'll never be in shape. Or, gosh, there's just not enough time in the day. Now notice, these are negative ways to frame the situation. Telling yourself that you always make excuses and that you'll never be in shape is not going to give you the self-confidence you need to achieve your goals. Telling yourself that you don't have enough time in the day is not going to help you get better about time management. And before we can start changing our thoughts to be more positive, we just have to become more aware that they're happening in the first place. The goal of this podcast is to start to change our self-talk to become more positive. So in our example, the thought of, oh, I always make excuses not to exercise, again, this is unnecessarily beating ourselves up. What I want you to do is take your notebook out. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, And I want you to try to reframe that thought in a way that's more positive. So instead of saying, oh, I always make excuses and I'll never be in shape, what is one way to make that thought more positive? Go ahead and take 30 seconds and write that in your notebook now.
All right, I don't think we need to sit through the 30 seconds. I'll just buzz through this here. Oops. Dealing with the Zoom stuff in front of me.
All right, thank you so much for doing that. So one example I thought of was, okay, I lost track of time today, but that's okay because I'm still able to meet my goal of exercising this week. I'm going to make a point to jog tomorrow after school, and I'll even set a reminder to make sure I do it. Notice how the way that we framed it, it's more positive. It's easier on yourself. You're not beating yourself up for not doing what you said you were going to do. Instead, you're taking an opportunity to acknowledge that you didn't meet your goal today, but you still have plenty of time to meet your goal, and you took a step to utilize technology to set an alert or an alarm on your phone to make sure that that happens. So today's assignment is going to be this. Throughout the day, I want you to write down 3 times in which you notice the way that you're talking to yourself in your mind. Again, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of practice to get good at positive self-talk. So the goal is not to make this self-talk positive right away. The goal right now is to just simply become more aware of the thoughts that you're having. So whether it's easiest for you to write down in your notebook or maybe a voice memo on your phone, however it's convenient for you, I want you to write down 3 times in which you notice the voice in your head and what it's saying. Now, after writing down the 3 self-talk examples, I want you to think about whether or not those are positive or negative. If they're positive, awesome, you're on the right track. Congratulate yourself and continue making your self-talk as positive as possible. Great job. Now, if you're like a lot of people and you notice that some of your self-talk is negative, I want you to write down a more positive way that that could have been said. This is going to start helping us retrain our mind to be more positive, to be more gentle. Again, this is going to reduce our stress and our anxieties, and this is going to make us more capable of achieving our dreams. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to hearing how your assignment went, and we'll see you next time on the Chase Your Dream podcast. Take care.
All right. Cool. So that was one of the episodes. I hope you enjoyed it. They're always they're fun and a little cringy for me because it's my voice, and you know how it goes. It's like when you hear your voice in a video or something, you're like, man, that's how I sound. But yeah, no, they've been really fun. And we get a lot out of them. And I think the next slide here. Oh, here's some. So just a few youth quotes that I pulled just from interactions and surveys and stuff. I learned how to change the thoughts with better self-talk. Now, instead of I don't look good today, I tell myself I do look good today. And instead of I need to try harder, I tell myself I'm proud of myself for doing enough. I love the holistic approach to self-improvement on the podcast. I learned how to reverse negative thoughts. And I love the episode on gratitude, how you talk about making a habit of saying the things you appreciate. So those are just a few quotes. These are, just some of the feedback from youth on the podcast. A lot of this stuff is, obviously things that are well known by adults, but maybe aren't always in practice. I know they're good reminders for myself too, when I, and just working towards becoming a better person myself, but it's also maybe the first time a lot of times a young person has been exposed to this type of content. So, kind of that self-regulation content and that mental well-being, how you perceive yourself, and if you amp yourself up or beat yourself down could make a huge difference in the types of decisions you're going to make that day. And so we really try to focus on that type of stuff on the podcast. I put this slide in here just to show you the diverse range of some of the goals in the program. We take an individualized support approach. Like I said, we don't really care what your dream is. We just want to help you with it. And so Kylie at the top, she wanted to be a Navy SEAL. We ran a fitness challenge with Kylie. She stuck to it. She did awesome, and she continued to, go to the gym. She actually got a membership after our challenge was over because she knew she was going to get her butt kicked at boot camp if she didn't get it together. So that was a really fun one. And then we've got Vincent there below. Vinny wanted to own his own car detailing business. He was 17 when he came into the program and turned 18, trying to figure out what he's going to do after graduation. And man, this kid is entrepreneurial with a capital E. He's just like one of those people. And so I thought I really identified that in him and said, sweet, let's get you connected with some resources in the community. So we actually got him a business mentor through score.org, which is a national program service organization, but they have local business mentors. So they met with Vinny in person and via Zoom once or twice a month to help him build his business plan and to help him, forecast out expenses, all that kind of stuff. So just 2 examples. Like I mentioned, we do work a lot on what is going on in school, but we also care a lot about what they want to do outside of school and what they want to do when they graduate. So just 2 examples there. This is another fun thing we did with one of the youth. This is by Kendall Deck, who was in our program. We ran a little challenge for artwork, and Kendall came up with this design, which we just absolutely loved. It was Chase with a little spray can guy. And to celebrate Kendall completing the challenge, we actually printed these up and we gave them to everybody in the program. So there are people, she just, loved seeing people wearing her design, and she loved completing the artwork too. She told me, I said, how'd you come up with this? And she said, well, I've just always wanted to do it. I just never got around to it. And so we again created that environment for her to dig in on that passion, complete something, and then see it on her friends wearing it around town. So that was a really awesome experience too. All right, community events. So I want to share a few of these. To the left there with the glasses, the bald gentleman, that's my friend Brian, incredible musician. He came out and played some songs for us. One of the things that we want to do in the program is we really want to show members of their own community who maybe have similar backgrounds as them, who are doing amazing things and chasing their dreams. And Brian, my friend, is actually very open about the trauma in his life, and he has a very traumatic history. And at this event, he came out and he played, and we got together with the families. A bunch of the parents came. We all shared a meal together. We got to hear Brian share not just his songs, but also his story. And he shared a lot about, some of the things he had been through. About halfway through, Brian just played instrumentally with his guitar, and we gave all the youth notepads there, and everyone wrote lyrics and poetry along to the music that Brian was playing. They were showing me some of what was written afterward, and it was one of those like hold back tears kind of moments, because it's just a powerful, music is a very powerful avenue for people to put their joy and their pain and all that. And so that was a really amazing event, and we're actually doing another one of those in September. A few photos from other stuff we've done. Here's us sharing a meal on the left at Jose Pepper's. Sean, I think, was actually at this one, which was very, very cool. We partnered up with a production company called Just Like You Films, and they did a film on anxiety and depression, which, as we know, is a huge, huge issue amongst the teen population. And we actually got the families out and some of the youth who starred in the film to host a Q&A at the end. So whoever was there got to kind of pick the family's brains live at the end of that film. That was a very, very fun one as well. And then I mentioned Isaac earlier. I snuck this one into the thing here. Here's another success story. In this particular event, we were talking about employment, I think, and Isaac was sharing his story about working at senior homes, and we had other people in the community there. So yeah, once a month at least, getting out in person, doing something like that's either educational or just meant to kind of let our hair down and have a good time. Let's see. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to end this presentation with this slide. If you keep chasing your dreams, one day you'll catch them. We really believe that. And I think that one of the things we got to remember is that, once we've addressed those base level needs of a young person, when it comes to, we got to make sure, obviously, that there's food and shelter and education, all those kinds of things. we got to remember too that there's, big aspirations in there somewhere. And so that's kind of what our program kind of stands for, is chasing the dream and trying to catch it one day. I'm going to throw up the Families Together phone number here for the recording, as well as my email address. If anybody has specific questions about how we work with the justice system, or anything I just talked about, or wants to connect with Families Together in general, we'd be more than happy to do that. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Crystal. And thank you, Stephanie, especially.
Can I ask you a question now?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we've met before, but for the sake of recording in the audience, how do you get connected with the youth? Is that voluntary? Is that court mandated? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's actually it's a good question. So we get referrals directly from the Department of Corrections. It's not supposed to be court mandated, the program. There's actually conversations happening right now about maybe a slight confusion there, because sometimes it is court mandated. It's not really supposed to be. It's supposed to be a voluntary thing to participate in. Most of the time when we get these referrals and connect with the families, they're obviously extremely relieved to have some help. And so it's not hard to get them involved in working with us. But yeah, we get a referral directly from the core team at the corrections department. It's got all the demographic information, has a little bit of information about the charge, but not much. That's not something we're super concerned about unless there's a safety aspect to that. And then it gives whatever history there is in terms of if they're in the foster care system, maybe some of their placement background, maybe some of, if they're in certain therapies, like if they're in family therapy. Yeah, we just get that all in a nice, neat referral from the Department of Corrections. And then we make contact with the family via email and on the phone, usually within 24 hours, 48 hours or so.
What is the age group? Is there a specific, box or window?
I would say most of the time we're working with high school students. I think we have one 12-year-old in the program. And I know Stephanie asked this question in an email recently, but because there are special ed, possibilities after age 18, I think up to 21, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but so I think technically we can serve up to 21 years old. I don't think we've had anyone over 18 in the program before. Usually it's kind of that like 13 to 16, 17 range, I feel like, just as kind of a gut instinct. But yeah, it's like 10 or 11 to 21 basically.
So Brad, I have a question. With all of your experience working with this population the last few years, what are the policy things in the state that you think would be something that you would change? Like, if you had a couple ideas that could change to make life better for these kids, what would happen?
Gosh, that's a tough question, Sean. As far as policies go, I'm not super sure about that. One thing that continues to come up in every single conversation, conference, everywhere I go, everybody talks about transportation.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially true for these families. Again, a lot of times they're, it's hard to afford getting a car. It's hard to go get a license. It's hard when your parents are at work in the summer getting to an event that we're putting on. So this is a conversation we're having right now a little bit. If there's one thing that I could change just right off the bat, it would be offering essentially free ride sharing. I think there should be. Yeah, I think there should be like an Uber or a Lyft solution in Kansas City that is just free for anybody that needs, that would qualify essentially for that.
Excellent. Very good. Very good.
Another question about the program. So can families reach out to you if they're trying to prevent, like maybe their kid is at risk of getting into the system, but hasn't yet been involved, or can it be preventative as well?
Great question. Want to be on our team, Crystal? Yeah, no, that's coming up a lot in conversations. We don't really, so I mean, Families Together is the PTI for all of Kansas. So even if you're not referred to our program by the Department of Corrections, you can reach out to Families Together whenever you want. And, we'll figure out a way to serve you, whether that's officially through the Chase program or in some kind of similar capacity. There's a lot of conversations happening right now about just that. It's about for those youth who are maybe, I don't want to call them red flags because whatever, we're all, we all have things going on. But for those, youth who are showing maybe trending towards involvement with the system, how can we, create some of those preventative measures around them? I think that we'll see more and more of that very soon. We don't have like an official process for that at this time. We're working with an organization called Telehealth Rocks and Robert Stiles, who's very, very passionate about this kind of work. And he is, and Trish Backman as well. And both of them are very focused on that younger age group and starting very early. So I wouldn't be surprised if even within the next like year or two, you see programs popping up to serve exactly what you're talking about.
So I have one final question for you.
Go for it, yeah.
Without naming names, what's a success story you can share? What's kind of in the time working with this program? What's an example of a real success story?
Oh man, yeah. Oh man, so many. There's one specifically who I got really close with, one of the youth in the program, and he had a truancy issue and he was just not going to school. And we finally got him to get to the IEP meeting. And while he was there, he actually became very overwhelmed, and he had a panic attack on site at the IEP meeting. And in the time it took for the nurse to get there, I actually went over to him, pulled him aside, and we went through some of the breathing techniques that we work on together and kind of helped him de-escalate from that. And then after that was able to not only pass his UA, which we had a goal for, but he was actually able to be at school on time for 2 weeks in a row, which was very necessary at the time for the specific placement we were working towards with the school. And so that would be one of the big ones that comes to mind. We got another one right now. He's in the Choctaw. He is of Choctaw Native heritage, and his goal right now is to sell his artwork on the website. So we've contacted the Choctaw tribe and we're getting close to that. That's going to be a huge success story. There's so many, Sean. I don't know. It's awesome, but those are a couple that stick out.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Well, Brad, I know whenever I've heard about this program, I've been so excited that it exists. Wish it were in every county and every part of the state that it's so badly needed. And wish you were able to be in every county and every part of the state.
Well, we got some exciting stuff in the works that probably shouldn't put on record quite yet, but yeah, we're always trying to grow the goodness and learning all the time and letting the youth lead this type of content and stuff. So thank you for saying so, though, Sean.
That's wonderful. We appreciate you being here, and
Thank you.
And everybody tune in September, where we'll have our next family education series.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well,